Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Aria in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today, we are really going deep into a week where European commitment and Russian kinetic threats just collided violently.
Yeah.
We're covering this incredible strategic tension our sources have revealed.
It's a huge story.
It is. It's this moment where a coalition of the willing in Europe formalized actual tangible plans to send troops to Ukraine, laying the groundwork for peace.
And Moscow's answer to that diplomacy was, well, it was extreme. It was nuclear-capable aggression, an immediate high-stakes collision.
Right.
We watched as the UK and France signed this declaration of intent for a multinational force in Ukraine, which is just a groundbreaking strategic commitment, only for Russia to unleash its most significant kinetic deterrent to date.
And targeting the very region those European forces would have to enter through. So our mission today is clear. We need to synthesize the documents around this declaration of intent from the UK, France, and Ukraine. We've got to track the hundreds of millions in financial commitments backing it up.
And understand why this diplomatic breakthrough immediately triggered Russia's most aggressive strategic signaling. And there's more. We'll also examine the crucial unseen economic war happening on the high seas,
Which is directly degrading Putin's ability to fund this war.
Mm-hmm.
What's so fascinating here is how intertwined these three things are: the diplomacy, the missiles, and the money.
They're completely linked, and we need to answer, I think, three crucial questions that really tie this whole story together for you.
Okay, first let's talk about the declaration itself. What exactly is this proposed multinational force Ukraine supposed to do? And how is this mandate, fundamentally different from traditional peacekeeping?
Then there's the response. Why did Russia fire the Oreshnik, an intermediate-range ballistic missile, at Lviv city just hours after the declaration was signed? I mean, what does using a nuclear-capable weapon like that signal about the escalation ladder?
And third, that financial shadow war. How are joint UK and US operations, like seizing the oil tanker Bella 1 in the North Atlantic, directly forcing hundreds of ships off the water and cutting off a vital $100 billion funding stream for Moscow?
It's a huge week to unpack.
It is. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start where the action kicked off. Paris, January 7th, 2026. This wasn't just some standard aid conference, was it?
Not at all. The UK, France, and Ukraine signed a declaration of intent that moves way beyond abstract support. It actually establishes the legal and military framework for a future deployment.
And that's the key distinction, right?
That is the key distinction. This document commits them to the future deployment of military forces, the Multinational Force Ukraine, or the MNFU.
Okay.
But crucially, this commitment is contingent on a verifiable peace deal being reached first. It's the UK and France taking this unmistakable leadership role in building what is essentially an international insurance policy for Ukraine's long-term security.
So when we talk about this MNFU, we have to be really clear about its mandate, because this is not the blue helmet UN force that people might be picturing.
Not even close.
So what is this force actually meant to accomplish on the ground?
Well, the mandate is incredibly robust. It focuses very heavily on deterrence and regeneration. The force's purpose is layered. First, it's designed to conduct deterrence operations across all domains, land, sea, air, to prevent any future Russian aggression.
Okay, so it's an active deterrent force.
Absolutely. But just as important, it will be deeply involved in long-term training, planning, and the full-scale regeneration of Ukraine's armed forces.
The rebuilding their capabilities.
Exactly. Think of this force not as some neutral buffer, but as an armed Western-led coalition ensuring Ukraine remains too strong to attack again after a peace deal is finally signed.
And the moment that declaration hit the wires, Moscow delivered its response.
And it wasn't a diplomatic cable.
No, it was an intermediate-range ballistic missile strike just days later, on January 8th and 9th.
Correct. Sources confirm Russia launched the Oreshnik IRBM, which struck a defense industrial enterprise near Lviv city, deep in western Ukraine.
And that location is so significant. It's as far from the front lines as you can get.
Yeah.
It's strategically provocative.
It is, and the provocation was amplified by Russian officials themselves. Dmitry Medvedev, among others, explicitly linked the strike to the European deployment plans.
Right. They used this nuclear-capable missile to threaten that Russia would strike any European or NATO troops deployed to post-war Ukraine.
And this is where the technical detail really matters for you. The Oreshnik is not an everyday cruise missile. It's an intermediate-range ballistic missile. an IRBM.
which were banned for decades under the INF Treaty.
Exactly. After the collapse of that treaty, these long-banned systems, which are strategically linked to nuclear doctrine, are back in the European theater. So using an IRBM for a conventional strike deep in the West, that's a massive strategic signal.
It's a performance.
It's a performative strike. It's intended to put a hard stop on the coalition's plans, suggesting that if European troops deploy, Russia will use the most escalatory conventional kinetic option short of, nuclear release to stop them.
So it's effectively drawing a red line across western Ukraine. It's a warning to any potential foreign troop convoys coming in from Poland or Romania. What kind of weapon is waiting for them?
Precisely. It's kinetic intimidation. It's signaling a fundamental change in Russia's willingness to escalate.
But that threat, that IRBM strike, it didn't cause the UK to back down. It actually seemed to have galvanized them.
It really does. Less than 24 hours after that strike, the UK doubled down on its commitment. They allocated a massive £200 million.
Which is about $268 million US dollars.
Right. And this came from their core defense budget, specifically to prepare British forces for this MNFU deployment.
So that's a powerful financial countersignal to Moscow's kinetic one.
It's a huge countersignal. And this isn't some theoretical future money. This funding is being dedicated today to upgrading critical equipment vehicles, communication systems, counter-drone protections, making sure British forces are fully prepared to lead the MNFU once a ceasefire is in place.
So they're planning for peace through strength.
Exactly. And that commitment goes deeper than just the MNFU prep, doesn't it? The sources highlight that the UK is extending specialized training for Ukrainian troops through 2026.
Right, and they've committed £4.5 billion to military support just this year. And there's even that ambitious target of supplying 100,000 drones by the end of 2025.
It's a truly holistic commitment to building long-term deterrence. But if the MNFU is the muscle, the U.S. remains the ultimate deterrent shield.
The success of this really hinges on the American component.
It is indispensable. The coalition nations are coordinating very closely with Washington to establish these robust security guarantees.
And we heard the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff describing these commitments as, and I'm quoting, as strong as anyone has ever seen, and emphasizing the U.S. is embedded as a key element of the future architecture of control and deterrence. But hold on. If these guarantees are as strong as anyone has ever seen, what exactly is the U.S. committing to on the ground? The MNFU involves UK and French boots. Are we going to see American soldiers there with them?
And that's the core contradiction the sources really highlight. The current agreement suggests Washington's commitment is powerful, but remote.
Remote how?
The U.S. and its allies agreed to a U.S.-led ceasefire monitoring and verification mechanism, but officials clarified this monitoring will primarily rely on drones, sensors, and satellites, not American boots on the ground.
So on one hand, you have this promise of the strongest security guarantees, but on the other, they're avoiding the direct kinetic risk that the UK and France are preparing for. Isn't there a risk Russia will see that as a gap in deterrence?
It's certainly a negotiation leverage point. I mean, Washington is attempting to provide the deterrent umbrella, the intel, the satellites, the technical oversight, without placing ground forces in the line of fire.
It ensures America stays central to the architecture while minimizing political exposure.
Right, and it forces European partners to take the direct physical lead on the ground. It's a high-wire active deterrence strategy.
And of course, before any of this deployment can happen, there's the democratic process. The UK Prime Minister was very clear that deployment would only happen after a ceasefire. And critically, it requires a full debate and vote in Parliament.
That parliamentary approval is the final layer of political legitimacy, and it ties directly into British public opinion. Our sources show that while 59% of Britons support UK assistance generally, only 41% support sending British troops for peacekeeping post-deal.
And there's also very little public appetite for Ukraine making territorial concessions, like giving up Crimea or the Donbass.
Exactly. So the diplomatic path has to balance Ukrainian sovereignty with maintaining that broad public consensus back home. That's something the government just cannot afford to lose before any deployment vote.
So all these long-term plans for peace and deterrence, they rely on one simple thing, bleeding the enemy dry now. So let's pivot to the shadow war.
Yes.
Because while the diplomatic and kinetic actions play out in the headlines, there's this crucial financial fight happening out of sight, particularly on the high seas.
This is a critical theater of operations. On the very same day the Paris Declaration was signed, January 7th, the U.S. and UK executed a major joint operation in the North Atlantic. They intercepted and seized the sanctioned stateless vessel Bella 1.
And this ship was falsely flagged.
Falsely flagged and tied very closely to illicit Russian and Iranian networks. The goal is to aggressively deter, disrupt, and degrade Russia's shadow fleet.
And this shadow fleet is this network of old, poorly maintained tankers that generated an estimated $100 billion from sanctioned oil sales last year alone.
An incredible amount of money. The UK estimates that this global sanctions effort has already forced 200 ships off the seas, which is a huge portion of the fleet's capacity. And it's reduced Russia's critical oil revenues by 27% compared to October 2024. That is an enormous financial hit, straight to the Kremlin's war chest.
It's impressive. But these illicit networks are constantly evolving to escape detection, right?
Yeah.
How are they adapting?
Oh, they're running a very complex game of cat and mouse. We're seeing constant evasion tactics. You have tankers switching off their GPS transponders for days at a time, or doing ship-to-ship transfers of oil in the middle of the ocean to hide the cargo's origin.
And they just change names.
All the time. Continuous renaming and reflagging. We saw tankers like the Veronica changing its name to Galileo, switching to a Russian registry, claiming some obscure home portal to fly under the radar of UK and US Navy surveillance. It's a high-stakes, low-tech attempt to fool global tracking systems.
Which brings us to the final front, the information war, where Russia is trying to degrade Western support and create internal uncertainty.
Exactly. Russian disinformation campaigns are operating on multiple tracks. They recycle old narratives, the claim of Ukraine being a neo-Nazi state, fabricating genocide in Donbass, denying documented war crimes like the Bucha massacre. The whole strategy is cognitive warfare.
Sowing seeds of doubt.
Sowing seeds of doubt in the minds of Western publics and policymakers. And we saw a confirmed, very specific operational example of this just this week, targeting foreign nationals in Ukraine.
The fake UK embassy flyer.
We did. Pro-Kremlin channels circulated a confirmed fake UK embassy flyer. It had completely fabricated advice for British citizens on how to avoid and interact with Ukrainian enlistment officers, the TCC.
And the goal was just to portray the Ukrainian government as chaotic and illegally trying to conscript foreigners.
That was the explicit goal. But there were key errors that exposed it as a fake.
What were they?
Two critical facts. First, the flyer claimed mobilization covered men from 25 to 65. The current Ukrainian law specifies the age range as 25 to 60. A small detail, but a mistake.
And the bigger one.
More importantly, Ukrainian law prohibits the conscription of foreigners or non-citizens. They can only join voluntarily. The UK embassy confirmed they never published the flyer, calling it fake information explicitly spread to discredit Ukrainian mobilization and damage trust in Kyiv.
So if we step back and just look at the whole picture, what does this massive stack of sources really reveal about the state of the conflict in 2026?
Well, I think we're seeing the true crystallization of the commitment to Ukraine's long-term security. The MNFU declaration and that massive financial investment by the UK, it signals a firm, expensive stance on achieving an enduring peace.
All backed by U.S. security guarantees.
Right, but that diplomatic and financial push is immediately countered by Russia's nuclear-capable missile threats and this ongoing shadow warfare on the economic and information fronts.
It really is a complex, high-stakes game. Every single action, from a parliamentary vote in London to seizing a rogue tanker in the North Atlantic to a strategic missile strike in Lviv, is moving the global chessboard toward either a negotiated, durable peace or
continued dangerous escalation in 2026.
Yeah.
And this preparation for peacekeeping troops, it highlights the ultimate necessary question that underpins all of this deterrent strategy. If a ceasefire is reached and the MNFU deploys, how will the rules of engagement be defined?
That's the critical part.
It is. British parliamentarians have specifically warned that deterrence must be credible. It has to be powerful enough to prevent a tragic failure like the 1995 Srebrenica massacre, where peacekeepers were just unable to act.
So the success of the peace itself hinges entirely on the specific military details of those rules of engagement.
That's a sobering reminder that the promise of peace has to be backed by the willingness to act instantly and credibly under force. The devil, as always, is in those deterrent details.
Indeed. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Area, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.